Alright. This video, we're going to talk about a book I actually just read. I read a book. I didn't just describe my shelves on a video. No, I mean, I'm always reading. It just takes a while to finish books. And my life is busy, and maybe I haven't prioritized reading in the way I should. Like, I feel like I need to set aside, with the busyness of life and the easiness of phones, I need to set aside time for, what? I don't know, just sitting down and reading. We'll call the actual book time, really getting into it, getting into that zone. But, I mean, it's satisfying to read and to really get into a book. It's not satisfying to distractedly read like 2 paragraphs here and then 2 paragraphs there, which is what I'm like sometimes up to. But squirrel's here too, sniffing the phone. Ugh. When you're a substitute teacher, which is a lame idea for a career in this world. I mean, I think all jobs should like pay fairly enough that you could do them as a career. If it's a necessary job, then like, it should just like, I mean, it seems like a just system would say it has to pay enough to live on. My podcast did an episode on an old taco chain called Pup and Taco that sold its last 300 locations to Taco Bell long ago, but used to have locations in Albuquerque and had some of the last ones that lasted long after the destruction of most of the chain, after changing their name to Pop and Taco. But my podcast did an episode on it, and one of my co-hosts, Nora, did a ton of research into the history of it, and she found these old classified ads that were like for managers at this taco place, and they like came with a house and like a stipend that was really good. They said they wanted to have someone with a family that so they knew that it would be stable. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, like if a business is important enough to exist, it should pay fairly, I think. Like delivering pizzas before, I've thought this would actually like be an okay job if it paid well, you're bringing food to people. And it's necessary. Like people get hungry and they want to get food that way sometimes, Many people, I mean, I saw all walks of life with that job. I mean, every one of my jobs has been such a lens, such a window into the world. I used to have this zine called Aphorisms Against Work, and I agreed with most of those. One of them was like, if work's so great, why is the heaven of every major religion not working? These cats are so great. I did spend a long time today cleaning up that litter box room. Ugh. But I just read this book, House Made of Dawn by N. Scott Momaday. It was really good. It's set in the Jemez Mountains of New Mexico in the 40s and in LA in the 50s and in the Jemez in the 50s. With this video, you can imagine that these words are from Prismo being beamed to you. Leave my hand out of it to complete the illusion. But this is a really good book. I don't think Monument Valley, Arizona is mentioned anywhere in it, other than maybe in some vague gesture to Arizona here and there. But somebody wanted that image on the cover, I think. That's what happens. The West, when it's marketed, it's a big puree. Like the Coen brothers just alternating between Arkansas and New Mexico to play different places in the West in True Grit. Or the Coen brothers using Albuquerque and El Paso interchangeably in No Country for Old Men. 2 of the most visually distinct cities I can think of. All for a tax credit. I mean, honestly, if you have a chance to put El Paso in a movie, put the real El Paso in a movie, where like that is one of the most visually striking cities in the world. I've never seen Istanbul, but it's got to be kind of like seeing El Paso Juarez a little bit. It's just so epic. And, it's pretty old. They were one town back in the day. And there were probably indigenous settlements there before I know there were. Anyway, this book tells the story of someone named Abel. And he's a young Native American man who's just getting back from World War II. And I think he's all messed up from it. And you just kind of get his personality in little pieces. And he's kind of enigmatic, kind of a cipher a little bit. Maybe he's kind of traumatized, but sometimes he speaks freely and his character is really interesting and watchful. And he gets kind of like ritualistically beaten by somebody at something, and it didn't have to happen. This guy was just cruel, was my take on it. This albino guy, and who may have been Native American. But he kills this guy later. He also sleeps with this woman who is living up there. The Jemez Mountains are the mountains north of Albuquerque. They were where the atomic bomb was developed. And in fact, I don't know why I wasn't thinking about that. That would have been going on concurrently as the story was going. Oh, this book has layers. And in the same area, the Jemez Mountains in the 40s. Yeah, that's Walatoa. That's the local native name for it, for that area. Jemez has a lost name origin, at least for the general public. Nobody knows what it means. It's the Spanish version of a native word. But yeah, 1945, so the year the bombs that were made in this place were used. So how interesting. That kind of just doubles how interesting I find this book and gives me like a parallel that's really interesting. But I could tell this was a really smart read. It really is like, it's well written. I could see its influences here and there, maybe, in some things. But that's not always bad, you know? That's one mode to operate in. But I felt like this book had a really interesting journey. I read some things about it online. It began as a collection of poems. It evolved into a collection of stories, and then it became a novel. That's incredible. I love it. And there's evidences of both those things in here. There's poetic prose, and there is poetry in it. There's chants and songs, and it's good. I really enjoyed this book, but it's like, it was sadder than I wanted. I mean, I don't know. It's a sad story, though. I mean, it's a parable in like 10 different kinds of ways, like about a native person feeling displaced after coming home. They're home, but they're not home. I mean, imagine having just experienced the trauma of World War II. What? Everyone's traumatized. The world must have been traumatized in 1945. But, you know, some people deal with trauma by not dealing with it. To my friend, Greg, a fellow runner and seeker along the many forested paths of life, that you may find what you are seeking. Love, Meg. She's all, it's me. This is the start of a rom-com. Kind of seems like that. Why don't you see me, Greg? Greg, I'm right here. Meg, reading this book. Actually, I already read it. Now you're going to read it. About the author. N. Scott Momaday, a Kiowa Indian, spent his childhood on Indian reservations in the Southwest. He is currently professor of English at Stanford University in California. He's also the author of The Gourd Dancer, Poems, The Way to Rainy Mountain, Folk Tales, and The Names, an autobiography. That's cool, these different forms. He is married and the father of 3 daughters. He's dead, though. He died kind of recently-ish. But I've known people that have known him. He's around the West. I think he's got an Albuquerque UNM connection. I'm telling you, New Mexico is, and Albuquerque in particular, is the cultic milieu personified. It's the edge that things get pushed to and form a new center. It's Weirdoville, man. No, I like Albuquerque. I'm kind of a booster. But I have a desire for it to be better. Yeah, the work felt at times very allegorical. And, well, maybe not like a direct and neat allegory, but like it was kind of about the story. Like if a character had an ethnicity in this, I felt like it was a representative ethnicity as well as that characters it was talking about larger things. Like, You have Abel, who is the indigenous character, and maybe I don't know what his tribe was. I don't remember, but maybe he's Kiowa, like the author. No, maybe he's Walatoa, because yeah, he's at Jemez Pueblo. Okay. New Mexico has had this amazing music scene that is like reggae beats with rapping about native issues over it, and they use reggae colors and stuff. And there's like 20 bands. There used to be a venue in Albuquerque that played just that kind of music, and it was like really unusual in its own thing. And I never even heard a good name for it. I'm like, what is this kind of music? But the best band from that scene that I encountered during my time as a music critic at the Alibi, this alternative paper in Albuquerque, was Walatoa Massive. They're awesome. Man, that's a cool band doing something different. If you can find their music online, dig it. Walatoa Massive. Anyway, so Abel, I wrote dying violently here, but he doesn't die, at least not in the part I read. I mean, I read it all. But, I mean, I might have missed something, you know. But in like the last chapter, he's alive and he seems to have survived things. And Francisco, his grandfather, who I hadn't really been clear early on was his grandfather. You kind of hear more about that later. He ends up real weak and dying. And he's Hispanic, you know, or mostly Hispanic. I don't know. And so is that some commentary, you know, on people descended from people from Spain and Mexico? And then the white character, the woman, yeah, it's kind of hilarious, actually. So toward the end of the story, spoiler alert, I suppose, for all these things, but this isn't a book about plot. It's about the experience. In fact, I think it might help you knowing a few things going into this one, just because it's kind of dreamy and you got to figure things out a little bit, or just let it wash all over, you know. But the white woman, Angela, who he has an affair with when he's working, not an affair because, well, I mean, I don't think she's married or anything, but she's pregnant from a previous relationship. And she ends up alive and she has a kid, but her kid is interested in native lore. I'm like, that's kind of hilarious. Is that racial commentary on that's where white people are at now? You know, like, sorry, they replaced the indigenous population pretty much completely, but they're interested in the lore. Not totally wrong on some levels for some people. Oh, yeah, but I guess I was thinking about that in this thing I read that 67% of Albuquerque homeowners, home buyers, are white in 2025. It's like, you know, yeah. There is, we do watch like cultural erasure happen all the time, and it's kind of crazy. But demographically, America is getting more diverse, so there's that as well. I kind of understand now that, like, if a population's birth rate exceeds its death rate, thinking now on a national level, that eventually you're not going to have a tax base. And so you can't maintain your infrastructure if that continues on. And apparently that's like happens all over the world. That's crazy. Countries, anyway. I don't think America really believes in itself right now. A country that believed in itself and believed in the future wouldn't be worried about, you know, birth and death rates and things, you know. They would want to have more people to continue living in the world. I was really blown away by the beauty of the prose in this. I could just flip through this and see. Oh, it won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. It sparked a Native American renaissance of writers. And it listed in one of the things I was reading about the Native American Renaissance, one of the writers that it helped inspire, like there's Leslie Marmon Soko, there's Joy Harjo, I would say Lucy Tapahanso. But it also listed Gerald Visner, and he was a professor of mine at UNM. He was awesome. He was from the White Earth Nation and had written their constitution. But it's really cool. I mean, that is one thing literature can do, and it doesn't mean it's less literary or something. I feel like I've heard some YouTube channels impugn writing that expresses different viewpoints. Like I want to know all the viewpoints. I want to read books by and about everybody that's ever lived. That's why I don't totally knock social media. It's probably the closest to that we'll ever have. Big weird art experiment made possible by commerce and filthy lucre. This is a 1960s paperback. Oh, but this is a 77 edition. Yeah, I felt newer. Taped it up a bit. Oh, a 1972 film adaptation was made. It's on YouTube in its entirety, and I'll watch it. Maybe sometime I'll do a film festival and watch a bunch of the paperback bookcase films and do a little review of them. I'll wait till there's like 10. But I read, so even though this film is preserved by different Native American history and heritage groups and considered of value, it was directed by a white guy. But it was based on a book written by N. Scott Momaday, who's Native, and it has a really powerful performance from a Native actor I have read. I mean, collaboration is not bad. Collaboration is good. As I heard someone quoted as saying once in some class, UNM, you can't unbake the cake of colonization, And none of us should feel guilty for anything or proud of anything any of our ancestors did. We're not them, We should just try to be accountable and be better. I do think reparations are in order for wronged groups in America. I mean, permanent disadvantage is all huge sections of the population have ever known. And it doesn't kill a country. Canada's been trying it, some reparations. Hey, it still exists. What? Anyone else wake up with mysterious scratches on them? That's great. Is it the cats? Sometimes I wish I hadn't watched all the Exorcist movies. I think it would be so cool to read the chapters of this correlating with the actual times. I might do that as a little fun literary book project sometime. Because this is a good book, and I can tell it already that it would reward rereading. I read online that people didn't know how to criticize it. When it first came out, they felt like they couldn't, in good faith, criticize a work by a Native American man of literature in the same way, that they had to just respect it. But, their loss as critics and readers and thinkers, because it's a really beautiful book and it deserves to be considered for its literary merit. I'm glad I read this. It was one, sometimes you're glad you read a book. This is one of those. Great Pulitzer Prize winning novel, a dazzling new chapter in American storytelling. Superb. The New York Times. Wow. It needs more tape. Look at that. That's Dostoevsky and the lack of indentation. Amazing. There's one indentation. His vision cleared and he saw the countless leaves dip and sail across the splinter of light. The machine concentrated, calm, strange, and terrific, and it was coming. He rolled over and scanned the ridge, looking into the sun. There was only the dark rim of the hill and the trees edged with light. The sound of the machine brimmed at the ridge, held and ran over, not intricate now, but whole and deafening. Then it came crashing down to the grade, slow as a waterfall, thunderous, surpassing impact, nestling almost into the splash and boil of debris. That's incredible. That's a description of a bulldozer coming into a forest. Whoa. I love nestling almost into the splash and boil of debris. I'm it's great. It's more poetic than it needs to be maybe, but it's perfectly descriptive. I wouldn't change it. Nestling almost into the splash and boil of debris. Oh, I felt like I discovered a term here. The white rain-furrowed apron of the hill. Dropped under him 30 feet to the highway. That's probably a technical term from somebody who studies geography or something, right? An apron? Or is that just a nice little metaphor? But I'm that's a good term for where the hill gets a little steeper and is washed away in parts here and there. Much of I-40 through to Harris Canyon is apron lined, I would say. Some of it artificially. Los Ojos, local reference. This hour of the day, especially the town, seemed to disappear into the earth. Everything in the valley inclined to the color of dust. One of the low plateaus, now invisible above her, had been gutted long ago by fire, and in the day she had seen how the black spines of the dead trees stood out. She imagined the fire which had run upon them, burning out their sweet amber gum. Then they were flayed by the fire, and their deep fibrous flesh cracked open, and among the cracks the wood was burned into charcoal and ash. And in the sun each facet of the dead wood shone low like velvet, felt like velvet to the touch, and left the soft death of itself on the hands that touched it. Ah, I love it. It's extra in such a great literary way. I love it. I love it. Like lush descriptions of bulldozer destruction, lush descriptions of forest fire debris. Oh yeah, this chapter, July 28th, the long hair. I wrote little notes all over it. I was so excited. I just love beautiful nature writing passages. Why do I love that? I don't know, but I do. Well, because I love nature. And it's like a recognition of it. Makes me want to go hang out in nature. Isn't everything nature? You know what I mean. Grass and stuff. Trees, critters. Coyotes have the gift of being seldom seen. They keep to the edge of vision and beyond, loping in and out of cover on the plains and highlands. And at night, when the whole world belongs to them, they parley at the river with the dogs, their higher, sharper voices full of authority and rebuke. They're an old council of clowns, and they are listened to. Love it. In the highest heat of the day, rattlesnakes lay outstretched upon the dunes, as if the sun had wound them out and lain upon them like a line of fire. Or knowing of some vibrant presence on the air, they writhe away in the agony of time. And of their own accord, they go at sundown into the earth, hopelessly, as if to some unimaginable reckoning in the other underworld. To me, that evokes Cormac McCarthy, but I bet this guy wasn't reading Cormac McCarthy. No, he predates him, right? 1966. Did McCarthy have any books that early? No, I think this guy had his own voice. It was a very desert voice. More likely, McCarthy was influenced by him. But this book, it brings in mythology and so much cool stuff. A different worldview that you don't see in every book. I'm sure some graduate student could parse everything I'm saying and make it horrible, but I mean, I don't know. Is it really so horrible to say that indigenous people generally have a better connection to the world, to nature and things, and a healthier, more sustainable relationship? I know people say that that's exoticizing, or that's falling into this or that trope or something like that about the noble savage or something. But I don't think, no, it's just true. Just go hang out on the res for a minute. It's people have a different relationship to the place. It's different. And anyway, some of the best nature writing is from indigenous writers. I mean, I'm really digging the passages in here. And I love Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's incredible. She's the future of nature writing. She's the freshest thing nature writing's had in decades. Anyway, this is not a work of nature writing overall. It just has those elements. It has a lot of really interesting elements. I mean, isn't that crazy that it began as poems and then became stories and then became a novel and then won the Pulitzer Prize? It was adapted into a movie. What a life. Ugh, I'm a sucker for shadows. I'll probably end up quoting this somewhere. As always in summer, the moment at which evening had come upon the town was absolute and imperceptible. And out of the town, among the hills and fields, the shadows had grown together and taken hold of the dusk, until the valley itself was a soft gray shadow. Even then there was a great range of colors within it, more various even than the sky, which now had begun to blush and fade. The tinted rocks and soils grew supple and soft, and the shine went off the leaves. I'm I love this. This is just so beautiful. Wow, you're a beautiful writer, sir. Rhythm of place. Who knows? I swear I'm in the severance program sometimes. I just I'm when did I write that? He had always been on the lookout for reverences, and here was a holiness more intrinsic than any he could ever have imagined, a slow druidic procession of seasons in the narrow streets. I love that. Oh, this book was great. I can't wait to reread those. This book gave me an idea. You hear people talk a lot about central images and so on, but bees are the sound of this book. Yeah, there's so many humming of bees described throughout this. And that's got to be commentary. And that's kind of brilliant to give your book a low sound woven throughout it. That's incredible. That's a smart idea. He's so good at description that when he describes sound or anything, it's great. I just enjoy it. I'm oh yeah, I like writing. Writing is good. I'm a writer. Good, I like it. Sometimes we forget. specter of rain. What got spilled on here or something? In August is a distillation of light upon the land, a harder efflorescence upon the rocks, a sterile uncommon shine upon the river and the leaves. An element of darkness, however vague and tentative on the midsummer sky, implies a thin and colorless luster upon the sand and the cliffs, and the dusty boughs of cedar and pine, and there is a quality like vein resistance in the air. An instinctive demand upon all histories to be fabulous. Yeah. 2 weeks ago, me was freaking out. Desert storm description, exclamation mark, in parentheses. Amazing description of rain. It is an amazing description of rain. I gotta remember this book. I'm gonna remember this book and Willa Cather, Death Comes for the Archbishop, if I need good descriptions of things like this. You never know when you need to quote something. And quoting increases connections in the big conversation that is art. A word I don't know. Soto Balao. Broken loaves of. Oh, I love this. It was dusk, and the rain had begun to fall in the streets, unevenly at first, spotting and pitting the dust with dark round stains. Then it grew fine and steady, and the hard earth of the middle began to shine. That is amazing. I love, that's like Robbie Gray, that kind of specific description of the sort of thing that we just ignore generally. As Alexander Pope said, what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. And I love that quote. That's cool. I don't want to read a bunch of old rhyming poetry. TBH. Love that. And maybe I'm making it seem like this book is all just descriptions of rain, but it's really not. It's really interesting. I think some of these notes are kind of for this channel and with this channel in mind. Why? It's a bit the stranger. Oh yeah, so this character Abel commits a murder. And spoiler alert, but you know, it won't hurt your enjoyment of the book to know some things that are going to happen. Well, he kills this guy that like really messed his hands up, beat his hands. So that's fine, right? But he goes to jail for it. But the book is kind of anti-linear and jumps around. And it shifts in its perspectives. At one point, it's like goes to a friend of a friend, and you hear it like a third party for a while. And there's time gaps, and you kind of got to figure it in. It's kind of a puzzle box in a way, a little bit. You've got to kind of put it all together. But I think it does make sense. That's why I've talked about rereading it a bit. I feel like it would really benefit from a fresh reread when it was still kind of in your mind. Just because there's a lot going on, there's a lot of levels. And now this whole atomic bomb thought, I'm like, whoa. Yeah, you said it in the Jemez, and he wasn't from there. He was from Oklahoma. So that's a choice. Los Alamos is in the Jemez. Los Ojos is in the Jemez. Those scientists went to the hot springs in Los Ojos. There's an E equals MC squared carved into the rocks dating back to the 40s, back behind a Girl Scout camp from one of the scientists. Not to mention, you know, most of the buildings of the Manhattan Project. A lot of that stuff is still there. While some of the architects that built a lot of the Manhattan Project, like Flatow and Moore, built so much of Albuquerque, and it's crazy. Sometimes I think of some of the buildings that they built here as like mushroom clouds almost, like these other things that bloomed up off the land from them. We're just surrounded by that nuclear story in New Mexico. It's really a part of life here. And it's kind of unspoken in this book if it's there at all, but it's kind of like a if you know type thing. I think that all the time, just looking at the low profile of the Jemez Mountains to the north, like, oh my God, what came from right there? An off switch for humanity. Something that would change the world forever in so many ways. Yeah, you know, I've been talking about a bunch of other things and some big things while talking about this book, but you know what? I think that's the kind of book this is. It evokes big things. It makes you look at your life up close. And it's beautiful. And it also expresses a viewpoint you don't get a lot in mainstream literary fiction, you know? An indigenous perspective, a Western perspective, you know, a fresh modern at the time perspective. This was very of the youth. I mean, you could tell. I mean, I don't know how old he was when this came out, but like, you could tell he was from a traumatized new generation. At least his main character is effectively rendered that way. I think Greg did read this book because someone marked it up with pen, and some of the markings are toward the end, so I think he read it all. So he must have liked Meg too. And maybe they got married. Anyway, I'm rooting for them because their lives were crazy. If this book came out in the 70s, so they might have been like my parents' generation, or maybe a little later. Yeah, because I don't think Meg would have marked it up in pen. So Greg was doing that marking after she gave him the book. Unless she underlined like her favorite parts or something and told him that later. But they had good taste in literature. Maybe they were a little bit progressive and wanted to read. They were into jogging or running. And maybe protecting nature or something. Oh, Greg and Meg. Wait, is that really their names? Their names even rhyme. Well, now I'm invested. What happened? Maybe nothing. Maybe they were just friends. She does say to my friend Greg, but I just feel like there's a lot of subtext there. Like, is she implying that she's what he's, seeking? Fellow runner and seeker, 2 seeking mentions. I don't remember where I got this book exactly, but I think I bought it at page 1. Anyway, this is part of the paperback project. I'm reading that whole case of paperbacks. It's the whole reason I started this channel. Then I was like, I guess I should find something to say every day. And then I was like, I'm so lonely. I'll talk to my camera. And anyway, it was a really good book. And Squirrel loved it. Prismo loved it. We all read it. We took turns passing it around. And that's how we'll usually do it on the channel. I like to talk about these things with people. And the only other people are these kitties. But unfortunately, when a cat flicks its tail, that means they like a book. That's usually how that translates. There's going to be like AI pet translators soon. There already are some. And you'll see. Love this book. Might even be Morse code. Squirrel, I would please respect the book, okay? All right? All right, don't tuck it between your thighs. That's considered rude. Shame them. Shame her. But do I recommend it? Yes. Will I be keeping it on the case? Yes. So far, I've been wanting to keep every book on the case that I've read. Read 4 there, 2 there. Working on those 2. And this one. Very good. Actually, I don't know. I just read 40 pages of introduction. But they were very interesting. But this book is great. Recommended. Deserved modern American classic novel. It's pretty anti-linear. It keeps you on your toes, but it tells an interesting story in an interesting way. If I have 200 books here and I've read 6 books, that means I've read 3% of these. This is going to take me forever. 3%? Well, good thing I like reading, What else am I going to do? Not read? All right. Okay. Oh, this is a good book. Read it. Good book. It is. In conclusion, it's good. What I liked about it was that I enjoyed it. Like some books I don't like, but this wasn't one of those books. This was a book I liked. I liked it, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was good. All jokes aside, great book. Really good. Enjoyed it so much. And I would recommend it. If you get a chance to read this book, you should. And if you haven't read books by, everybody in every group, get on that, Like it's cool to know the world and, our fellow human beings. What I think is really remarkable, though, and notable is you totally forget that whole element of this work. This is just a great novel. It's a great novel full of great writing with a story that'll stay with you and that I'm still kind of trying to make sense of. It's kind of an emotional, historical puzzle in a way. It's an allegory to puzzle out, but, not a one-to-one perfect neat one. It just provokes all these different thoughts and ideas. And also seems like very true in its way. Like, I do not doubt the characters exactly like every character in here exist. I felt like I have known characters like almost every character. Almost unbearably authentic and powerful, uncanny, unlike any writing I've ever read. Anyone who picks up this novel and reads the first paragraph will be hard-pressed to put it down. Cleveland Plain Dealer. Do you think they mean the first paragraph of the prologue or the book proper? Diapola. There was a house made of dawn. It was made of pollen and of rain, and the land was very old and everlasting. There were many colors on the hills, and the plain was bright with different colored clays and sands. Red and blue and spotted horses grazed in the plain. There was a dark wilderness on the mountains beyond. The land was still and strong. It was beautiful all around. Or, the river lies in a valley of hills and fields. The north end of the valley is narrow, and the river runs down from the mountains through a canyon. The sun strikes the canyon floor only a few hours each day, and in winter the snow remains for a long time in the crevices of the walls. There is a town in the valley, and there are ruins of other towns in the canyon. In 3 directions from the town there are cultivated fields. Most of them lie to the west, across the river on the slope of the plain. Now and then in winter great angles of geese fly through the valley, and then the sky and the geese are the same color, and the air is hard and damp, and smoke rises from the houses of the town. The seasons lie hard upon the land. In summer the valley is hot, and birds come to the tamarack on the river. The feathers of blue and yellow birds are prized by the townsmen. Interesting choice to use tamarack. That's tamarisk, and it's an invasive species brought in the late 1800s to prevent soil erosion. Like if you read old accounts of walking along the rivers in like even the 1800s, they always talked about quicksand and muck and mud. And that's all gone now because of tamarisk. And it's crazy. It just escaped from the nurseries, came from Ireland and Northern Africa. I wonder if that's a choice, if the author knew that was an invasive species. I always try to give authors the benefit of the doubt and figure, even if they might not have consciously known, maybe they knew on some level, and they put it in the writing for a reason. Probably has a poet's like of the sound of that word, too. But that is interesting if you think about tamarisk coming from Great Britain and Africa, and this book being written by an indigenous American voice. Whoa. Yet this text seems to place the tamarisk as part of the larger landscape. That's interesting. The atomic stuff, that's a puzzle I feel like I've only just begun to think about in this book. You know what? This is going to be so cool to read this whole bookcase of books. This project is a great idea. Is it going to pay my rent? No, probably not. Got to figure that out. Gosh, it really throws you off when you're a substitute teacher and you have these breaks. Like we just had 9 days of no work because of spring break. Everyone's all spring break, woo! I'm like, not getting a check the week after that, woo! I've heard 60% of Americans live check to check, so I don't feel like I'm a total freak here. Though I definitely have gotten way too close to the edge in my life as a result of, I don't know, probably 10 undiagnosed mental things and just being a weirdo. A writer who lives in the world of words. But Prisma thinks that's fine. Well, cool. Good book. New book I really like. I'm going to seek out more in Scott Momaday, pick it up when I see it, and, speak positively of him whenever his name comes up. If I'd read this before he died, I think I would have been a lot sadder when I heard about him dying. All right. Thanks, folks.